Today we're talking about the 10 most unique books I read in 2024. When I say unique books, I'm talking about books that maybe had an unconventional structure to them. Maybe it's in a genre I typically read a lot of, and so I feel like I'm very accustomed to knowing where the book's gonna go. But these books really broke the mold, and the whole time I was like, I don't know where this is gonna go. This feels really fresh and unique. Or maybe it's an idea that I've never read before executed in a book. These are just the books that stand out to me in my memory when I look back at the year. They may have not been my favorite books. In fact, at least half of these I ended up not actually loving, but they had something unique about them. And I personally, as someone who reads a ton, love finding these books that just feel like something new. Even if you don't always love them, it's just nice to encounter some kind of new concept or to get a new feeling, a new experience from reading a different type of book. I'll start with the group of books that weren't my favorite, and then I'll end with the books that I did end up also really loving. First up is Coup de Grâce. This is a mind-bending and visceral experimental horror novel about a young man trapped in an infinite Montreal subway station, perfect for readers of Mark Z. Danielewski and Susanna Clark. The story follows a man who's decided that he wants to take his own life, but then when he steps out of the subway station to the destination that he was going to, he realizes he is in this liminal space. The story follows him exploring this space, trying to find his way out of it, and spending that time meditating on life a bit. It didn't end up fully coming together for me, but the concept was interesting. The actual writing and visualization of the place that he was trapped in was definitely unique, and then the story at the end takes a unique angle and a way to wrap up the story. That was kind of cool, but still didn't pull the book all the way together for me, but it was definitely a unique one. Next up is Model Home by River Solomon. This is a new kind of haunted house novel that turns the haunted house story on its head, unearthing the dark legacies of segregation and racism in the suburban American South. This story follows 3 adult siblings who are brought back together after the death of their parents. They grew up in this house in this small Texas town where they are pretty much the only Black family in the neighborhood. There were a lot of things that happened in that house. There are a lot of things that have happened in these siblings' lives after they have left that house, and all of that collective trauma is all coming back up with them being back together. This one was very unique in terms of its writing style, which I did sort of expect because I have read from River Solomon before, and I know that they do have this very unique tone and writing style and the way that they bring their stories to life. While you're reading this book, it does really feel like you are getting the story told to you in the cloud of someone's trauma, which is very effective, but also was very heavy to read. So a warning for that. But the concepts that this book explores, the way it explores this idea of the haunted house and what the haunting was very unique and different. I didn't love the way that the story wrapped itself up at the end because I did feel like it was doing this really unique thing for a lot of the story, and I didn't feel like the ending exactly matched what I was hoping that it would do. But if you're tired of reading the same old haunted house story over and over and over again, I can guarantee you this one will feel new. Next up is All This and More by Peng Shepherd. This is a sci-fi novel about a woman who gets the chance to rewrite every mistake she's ever made when she gets cast on a reality TV show where you can make different choices and see how your life would change. Similar to the concept of the reality TV show, within this story, this book also presents itself as a choose your own adventure story where you, the reader, get to make the choices of how you want to navigate the main character's story. Every time the main character is making a decision at a crossroads in her reality TV show to try to explore how her life would have gone if she took a different job, if she ended a relationship, if she pursued a new relationship, you get the choice at the bottom of the page to which one you want to explore, and then it jumps you to that chapter to see how the character's life played out. While I loved the concept of this and a choose your own adventure story, it did read a bit repetitive to me. It kind of felt like the same thing was happening over and over again as the main character would explore a life path, end it, choose something else, go explore another one, end it, choose something else. So that was my main criticism of this book, but I know choose your own adventure stories are hard to find, so if you're someone who particularly enjoys those, this was one that came out this year that you might like. Next is Craft, Stories I Wrote for the Devil by Ananda Lima, which follows a writer who slept with the devil at a Halloween party in 1999, and then throughout her life, she keeps seeing him and writing stories for him. The author, Ananda Lima, was born in Brazil and now lives in Chicago, and so that comes up a lot in these stories as well, as they speak to modern Brazilian American immigrant experiences. This collection is made up of 9 short stories that range from different topics with fantasy elements suspense and horror elements. In general, I think the whole concept of these short stories coming together feels a bit experimental, but within the stories themselves, some of them take an even more experimental angle that really give a unique feel. One of my favorite stories in the collection was a story that was told entirely from the perspective of critique notes that people would give each other in a creative writing workshop, which I thought was very cool. While the book didn't fully come together for me, I did enjoy some experiences throughout the stories in this collection, and I'm definitely interested to read more from this author in the future. Next is Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight by Riku Onda, translated by Allison Watts. This is a mystery story set over the course of one night in Tokyo where two people have decided to be together one last time in their shared flat before parting. I haven't read a ton of mystery thriller books translated from Japanese, but from my experience with them, they do give a different feeling from reading a mystery thriller book from a British author or from an American author. They do seem to have their own different kind of spin on these stories. And Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight, I would say, reads most like a psychological suspense as the story is unfolding to you, and you're just following these two people spending this evening together, trying to figure out what has happened between them and what is going to occur in that night. You think it's one thing, but you end up getting another thing. The whole story in itself is kind of elusive to you as the reader, and I really like that experience of feeling like you've really got to figure some stuff out yourself and that everything's not being spoon-fed to you. So if you're looking for a kind of fresh take on a psychological thriller, maybe check this out. Next is The Sleepwalkers by Scarlett Thomas. This is a suspenseful, modern gothic story following a couple running from both secretive pasts and very present dangers while honeymooning on a Greek island. I was expecting this thriller book to feel pretty conventional based on the synopsis. You're following this couple honeymooning on a Greek island. There are these ominous vibes around them because there was a couple there last year who ended up drowning together. It seems like people are keeping secrets. They're just picking up on a lot of weird vibes. It sounded kind of like White Lotus or, just other island thrillers that I've read before. But this story had a unique angle to it in the way that it was told to you, the reader. The story is told through documents, mostly letters, and some of them have missing pieces to them. The story is mostly told through one character's perspective, but you end up getting a couple other perspectives as well. And it makes you question what's real, what's not, whose perspectives can be trusted, how do different perspectives change the story, or even just change the perception of what truth is. And it really ended up surprising me, and I had a great time with it. Next is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. This is a high concept murder mystery where a group of survivors after the apocalypse are living on an island, then a murder occurs, and if the murder isn't solved within 107 hours, they will die. In this story, the world has ended after this mysterious fog overtook the land and ended up killing a lot of people. But on this one island, these people have secluded themselves and remained safe from the fog. Until now, one of their lead scientists was murdered. When they were murdered, the security system automatically shut down, and they only have 107 hours to solve the murder so that they can reinstate the security and prevent their own death. This is a very speculative sci-fi dystopian style of story that does have a mystery running throughout the narrative. I feel like Stuart Turton's previous two novels have been very mystery first, whereas this one felt like it was more sci-fi first and concept first, with some of the concepts that he was exploring really about existentialism and what's worth saving in this world. The concept and the direction that it took felt unique. I feel like Stuart Turton's always doing these risky, bold things. If you like your mysteries with a side of sci-fi, then I recommend giving it a try. Next is Horror-A-Movie by Paul Tremblay. This is a cursed film horror story that is about this movie called Horror-A-Movie that has a rabid fan base. There are certain parts of that film that were never released to the public, and 3 decades later, they're making a big budget reboot of this film, and the only surviving cast member is becoming a part of the reboot. As memories flood back in, the boundaries between reality and film, past and present, start to blur. This story has a meta quality to it because you're also reading the original screenplay of the film interspersed throughout the text as you're reading the main story about the reboot of this film happening. Very quickly, the lines between reality and the film start to blur even for you, the reader. And it takes you through this really slow burn journey that just feels so unsettling. Paul Tremblay is typically writing some weirder stuff. I love his weirdo brain. It just works with my weirdo brain. I love his stories. They're not for everyone, but if you're looking for a psychological horror story that feels a bit different from the mainstream, then I definitely think you should check out Paul Tremblay's books in general, and this is his latest that came out this year. Next is The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This is a story about a woman named Lauren who realizes her attic is creating an infinite supply of husbands. Throughout the story, Lauren confronts the question, if swapping lives is as easy as changing a light bulb, how do you know you've taken the right path? When do you stop trying to do better and start actually living? I really enjoy stories like this that are grounded in reality but have something a little bit magical to them, such as a magical attic that keeps distributing new husbands for this woman. I also really like when these stories make you think about life and your choices and how we live our lives and what you would do if you were put in this scenario and what really matters in life. I just love going down that rabbit hole of questions, especially when you can have a fun, quirky story take you through that journey. I have read books with the similar feel to them before, like Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemor or The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich, but this is the first time I've ever read a book about a magical attic distributing husbands, so it's definitely a unique concept, and it's one of my favorites I've read that's in that style of writing. Next is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer, which is a horror novel about two homeowners whose lives are turned upside down when the house's previous residents unexpectedly visit. It's really best to go into this story not knowing too much about it. All you need to know is the old residents show up at the house and they ask to come in because they used to live there and they want to see around. That's where the book kicks off, and it takes you on such a wild journey from there. The story has a very uncanny element to it, and I've been sort of comparing it to the book House of Leaves, which in itself is a very unique book. I never knew where the story was going to take me, what kind of journey we were going on, who I could trust, if I could even trust myself. It explores some concepts that truly terrify me, and it leaves quite a bit open-ended, and people on the internet have taken to really investigating what's going on in this book. So if you're looking for a interactive sort of element to a book where you can really dive down some rabbit holes to try to understand what happened and what theories other people have, this is a great one for that. So that's it for my top 10 most unique books that I read this year. Let me know down below if I convinced you to pick any of them up, and let me know if you have any books that you encountered this year that felt especially unique. But that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!